Floods and rising death toll from Hurricane Irene, there are people all along the East Coast wondering where the money will come from for them to recover. Many will turn to the federal government, but if Republicans have their way, the victims of this storm will have their relief funds held hostage while Congress tries to find savings to offset disaster spending. Here's how House Majority Leader Eric Cantor put it on Fox News on Monday.
In instances like this, yes, there's a federal role. Yes, we're going to find the money. We're just going to need to make sure that there are savings elsewhere to continue to do so.
At least the guy's consistent. Let's bring in our political panel now. With us from Washington, MSNBC contributor Jonathan Capehart of The Washington Post. And with me here,
Martin.
Hi, Jonathan, and here in the studio, Democratic strategist Krystal Ball. Good afternoon. Krystal, can I start with you?
Sure.
This theory of we'll pull you out of the wreckage when we find the spending cuts to pay for it. Is this really the ongoing principle that Republicans are going to deploy now?
I mean, the fact of the matter is yes. And I said this during the debt ceiling debate. We have entered the era of hostage-taking politics, and that's what this is. This is just an extension of holding the country hostage to get their way, and it's despicable. And I would point out, Eric Cantor, Majority Leader Cantor, his district was not only hard hit by the hurricane, very close to my hometown,
Indeed.
It was also the epicenter of the earthquake. So this is a guy who should know that his own constituents are suffering and need this aid and this help right now.
Jonathan, it's interesting to note that Cantor took an even more hardline stance on disaster aid, as Krystal was saying, before his district was hit by an earthquake. Now he says, oh, well, the people in Virginia don't have quake insurance. Do you really think people in places like Virginia, Vermont, New Jersey will be glad to hear that any kind of recovery will only occur if Eric Cantor finds cuts in expenditure elsewhere?
No, they won't be happy. I mean, it works. You know, Majority Leader Cantor's comments only work when there are no disasters or when the disasters that do befall us are so minimal that you can take care of it without borrowing or without going to extraordinary measures. The problem that he's going to have now is sort of this Republican orthodoxy that we're going to have to find cuts in order to spend on things that the American people want. And it just doesn't work. We're seeing how this just does not work. How Eric Cantor, as Krystal said, will be able to go back to his district and tell the people of his district, like, sorry, we're not going to be able to repair, you know, these homes or schools or roads or bridges or whatever has been damaged in the quake and in Hurricane Irene. They're not going to put up with it, nor should they.
Krystal.
Well, I was going to, not to throw another hot button issue into this, but this is a new reality for us. These extreme weather events are going to be even more frequent.
Certainly this year is one of the worst on record.
That's absolutely right. If we continue in the direction that we're continuing in right now with climate change, this is the new normal. So we're going to need more disaster relief, not less, is the unfortunate truth.
The Virginia congressman is also out with a new list of 10 job-killing regulations, namely union protection and the EPA. Let's hear what he had to say about that.
You're talking about the National Labor Relations Board, which has made decisions that stop companies from or begin to try and stop companies from relocating or expanding in states that they so choose to create new jobs, or whether it is the EPA, which has been on a rampage, making it more difficult for small businesses, for manufacturers to deal with added cost so that they can't create jobs.
Yeah.
Krystal, is it helping America's workers to allow Boeing to relocate from unionized Washington to South Carolina, a right-to-work state?
Well, I mean, the bottom line here is that the NLRB is investigating whether this was an appropriate and lawful move based on existing law. They're just doing their job to look into it. So Republicans have really seized on this talking point, but the NLRB is just doing their job. And I also want to point out with the EPA, a lot of the regulations that they're putting in place now were actually judicially mandated based on Bush Bush administration cutbacks, and unlawful cutbacks at that. So they're judicially mandated to do a lot of what they're doing
Indeed.
right now.
And Jonathan, 7 of Mr. Cantor's job killers are environmental regulations. So is it really small businesses that are suffering under greenhouse gas restrictions? Help me.
You're sort of answering your own question. Now, look, what we're seeing, again, is Republican ideology and orthodoxy now in power there in the House. They firmly believe that EPA regulations and other regulations throughout the government are impeding the flow of business. They're impeding commerce, impeding job creation. And, you know, I just don't think that's the case. Now, that's not to say that there shouldn't be some changes here and there, but to wholesale gut the EPA and its regulatory authority, I think, is sort of missing the forest for the trees here.
Indeed. Krystal and Jonathan Capehart, thank you very much for joining.